Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Reacteria. A couple of months ago, I watched Eric Hoven's terrible Night at the Museum ripoff movie. It was an awful experience, as Eric Hoven and Answers in Genesis did what they always do, which is to misrepresent, misinform, misinterpret, and just straight up lie about evolution and its proponents in order to fool people into buying into their disgusting worldview, with a heavy emphasis on the buying part. And while I thought with vain and naive hope that I could have just left it there, I knew deep down in my heart that someday I would have to watch the sequel to that monstrosity. The fact is, I just don't like leaving adventures unfinished, and apparently this journey into madness is only approaching its middle. So tonight, we're gonna watch the next Eric Hoven movie, Night at the Ark Encounter. But before we begin, I'd like to take a second to thank my patrons on Patreon, as well as my channel members on YouTube. You guys are the reason why I'm able to dedicate so much time to researching, writing, traveling, speaking, filming, editing, and all the other things that go into making science fun and accessible. This year, I've traveled to different countries, I've spoken at several different conventions, I've released some of the most fun videos of my entire career, and I've received hundreds of letters and emails from people who are excited to be learning real science for the very first time. And none of that would be possible without the people who send me just a few bucks a month. So to all my patrons and members who are watching, thank you so much for being a part of my dream. And I'd also like to take just one more second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Brilliant. Brilliant is the ultimate everyday learning app. It allows you to explore real math and science with daily interactive lessons right at your fingertips, allowing you to let your education fit your lifestyle, not the other way around. Unlike traditional videos and lectures, Brilliant has you actively solving problems right from the start. So you're not just passively taking in information, you're actively learning by doing. And right now, they're offering my subscribers complete access to their entire platform absolutely free for a full 30 days, plus 20% off an annual subscription to Brilliant Premium. And all you gotta do to get it is go to brilliant.org/Forrest Valkai or use the link in the description below. Brilliant's lessons are crafted by experts from top institutions like MIT, Caltech, and Microsoft. With their help, you're not just memorizing facts, you're building real-world critical thinking skills that stick with you long after you've put the app down. That's what makes Brilliant so brilliant. As for me, I'm a huge fan of their scientific thinking course, because it allows you to explore the science shaping the world around you and discover some fresh perspectives on the universe that you live in. So why wait? Head on over to brilliant.org/Forrest Valkai or click the link in the description. Remember, you get 30 days of unlimited learning for free, plus 20% off an annual premium subscription. It's a smarter way to learn, a great way to support the channel, and a step towards making the world a more curious place. And with that, let's suffer through another Eric Hoven film. The movie starts with a view of the ocean that I wish I was walking into right now. From there, we get the same style of opening credit sequence as we got in the last film, with the names of the cast and crew along with panning shots of different exhibits around the museum. A couple of their choices in this sequence were probably meant to be funny, but are actually just really unfortunate, like where they named Tim Chaffee a large bald man alongside this display of a large bald man with braided pubes who's actively spearing a woman. Or this one, where they show that there are dinosaurs in cages here on the Ark. If you ask me, this is giving up the goose too early. These displays should have been a big reveal later on in the movie. But Answers in Genesis does famously believe that dinosaurs lived alongside humans, that they were actually dragons, that they made it onto the Ark and then somehow died off later, except for the ones that are now modern-day lizards. It's confusing enough without trying to make it coherent. There are also other wild displays that they show right away, like this Lystrosaurus, which isn't even a dinosaur. They lived during the Permian. If you want to learn more about Lystrosaurus and some other Permian animals, you can do so in this video right here. But as for this exhibit, I don't think it's actually about Lystrosaurus. I think this is an exhibit about the luckiest person in the world, who is this person that gets to hand feed the Lystrosaurus. Seriously, I would kill for that. Lystrosaurus is one of my favorite animals of all time. They also show this display of a bunch of people in a Colosseum type setting fighting what could either be a Carnotaurus with decorative gold horn coverings or some other theropod with a shiny little wizard hat. Personally, I'm partial to the wizard hat side of things, but either way, that butter knife is not gonna cut it. And oh my glob, the jump scare teddy bear from the last movie is back. The credits go on for a really long time, and there are a lot of Hovens in there, but eventually the movie begins with Derek the security guard pulling up in the same garish muscle car as before.
Hey, Ricky. Hey, man, how was school? Oh, good. Hey, with this new job, I might get to hang out every single weekend. Yeah, it's garden museums or something.
How does Eric still not know what his job is? The first 80% of the last movie was figuring out what building he was in, and now he's just guarding museums or something? Who gave him this job?
Whoa! They've got me guarding Noah's Ark.
Derek walks up to the museum, taking time to appreciate its impressive size. He's big on sizes. I don't know what that means. And then we finally get our first look inside at the gift shop, just like the real Ark had. See, it says right here, "And the Lord said unto Noah, this money ain't gonna make itself, old man." And then we're reintroduced to the character of Jim, and Derek immediately starts back in with the whole Gigantor bit.
Can I call you Gigantor?
Sure, dum-dum.
Oh, got me.
Yeah.
You guys told me in the comment section of the last video that the whole Gigantor thing was a reference to the actual Night at the Museum movie. I don't know if Dum Dum is as well, or if that was just the most awkward interaction I've ever seen in my life, but I suppose both is an option. This shot of the bookshelf in the gift shop is especially fun for me because of some of the titles you can see in there. Of course, there are several books about dragons, because remember, Answers in Genesis literally believes that dragons were real, that they could fly and breathe fire, that they lived after the flood, and that the last dragons were slain by knights in shining armor, and that's where we get the dragon-slaying legends of fairy tales and stuff. All of that is on their website, and all of that is stuff that they try to smuggle in under the thin veneer of doubting evolution. We've also got this book on flood geology, which is a lot of fun, and Will They Stand by Ken Ham. A book about how to train your children to stand up to the depravity and the secularism and the hatred of Christians that people like me call living in the real world. But my personal favorite has to be this gem over here, Christianity and Wokeness. The Amazon page for this book is great. The first few lines of the description describe some views that the author claims the woke mob are propagating. Views like, white people should be less white, whiteness is white supremacy, silence is violence, and you can never overcome your racism. And I've got to hand it to him, those are all words. The description goes on to say that these beliefs and many others are driven by the, quote, radical ideologies of critical race theory and intersectionality. Two things which, just like socialism and oddly enough the theory of evolution, I have yet to hear properly defined by anybody who thinks that they are major problems facing America.
Yeah, this place is amazing.
It is, you know, it goes up 3 stories from here.
Wow, I'm gonna have a lot of fun exploring this place tonight.
You're gonna get your steps in too. Why don't we go have a look around?
Yeah, let's do it. No way!
Pretty big, isn't it?
So, you really think a guy that was like 900 years old built this whole thing by himself?
Well, he didn't build it by himself. He had family members that could have helped out. He could have hired construction crews. And you know what? Think about that. That would have given him an opportunity to warn people about the coming flood.
And he did a great job at that, except for the fact that he and his family were the only ones who survived. So I guess he didn't do that great of a job at that. But I'm sure he warned somebody, and that person probably bought like their own dinghy or whatever, only it didn't work because Noah and his family were the only people who survived. Why did no other boats in the entire world work?
So, you know much about the flood?
You know, I really don't.
Jim then recants the tale of the flood to Derek, explaining how God had to flood the world because the world was so bad and so full of violence.
Remember Adam and Eve?
Oh, the naked people, yeah.
Well, they were for a time, right?
Okay.
What happened?
Sin.
That's right, and then when they sinned, death entered the world. And eventually the world became so bad, so full of violence, that God judged that world with a flood.
Because as any therapist or social worker or just halfway decent person will tell you, the best way to stop violence is with extreme violence. Dead people don't fight. If you want to put an end to evil in the world, the best and quickest solution is to be so monumentally, monstrously evil that everybody else just pales in comparison. Or at least they would, except for the fact that they're all drowned now. The point is, you gotta fight fire with fire, or in this case, water.
This is in the Grand Canyon. These are bent rock layers. You see these?
Yeah.
So how can you explain this over billions of years? If each of these were laid down slowly and gradually over long periods of time and they're hardened, and then this upwarp occurs, what would happen to all those rocks?
break.
They would break, and you don't see that. So how can we explain that? The worldwide flood would lay down all these layers very rapidly, and while they're still soft, you get this upwarp that bends all of these, and they're not broken. This is evidence of a massive flood, not slow and gradual processes.
This is the first part of the movie where we actually get something somewhat interesting to talk about. Tectonic folding happens when tectonic forces put contrasting stresses on rock layers, either compressing them or pulling them apart, causing them to bend and deform. This can happen in a few different ways, creating a variety of different landforms, which are especially visible after the surface layers erode, revealing these radical wave patterns. And of course, all of this usually happens deep underground where there's hotter temperatures and a lot more confining pressure to make sure that these layers deform without snapping. Now, I'm a biologist, not a geologist, so as far as the nitty and literally gritty details of this whole process are concerned, I'm not super equipped to talk about them, but what I can say is that this is a natural process with a natural explanation. So attributing this to a global flood makes about as much sense as attributing the fossil record to a global flood, which is to say, it makes no sense at all. Jim tells Derek that there's lots more evidence for the flood, but he's certainly not going to stick around to talk about it.
This is just one of the many evidences for the worldwide flood. In fact, there's a lot of them here in this building that I think you can explore tonight.
I'm looking forward to that.
I've got to get going.
Okay.
Derek, have a great night.
All right, thanks, man.
So he pieces out back to his lair, leaving Derek with a final bit of advice.
Oh, and Derek,
Yeah.
don't fall asleep.
Oh, don't worry, I won't.
Spoiler alert, he is going to. He is absolutely going to, although not in the way that you expect. We then get a long sequence of Derek walking around the museum, similar to the long sequence in the last movie of him walking around a different museum. Because at the end of the day, these videos have about 5 minutes of actual content, and they need to fill up the rest of the time with what are effectively promotional reels. So we're forced to watch as Derek walks through the wood exhibit, past a bunch of wood, and finally into the wood section, where he plays with his flashlight a little bit too hard and accidentally unicorns himself to death. Just like in the last movie, he's supposed to be playing this stupid but lovable oaf, but he just forgot to do the lovable part. Derek then awakens into a coma dream and immediately begins being tossed around by the weight of his acting talent.
Whoa!
And eventually, the rocking of the ship throws Derek to the feet of the man who walked out of the movie less than 2.5 minutes ago.
Derek,
Jim?
it's the flood. At the beginning of the flood, the fountains of the Great Deep broke open, ripping apart the original continent. The water levels rose globally. Tsunamis battered the land, ripping apart the land and dragging it into the sea. During that initial 40 days and 40 nights of torrential rain, creatures from all around the globe were being drowned in the floodwaters.
For their sins. They deserved it. Especially Pachycephalosaurus. Look at that guy. He needed to drown. It was the only moral thing to do.
The waters covered the mountains to a depth of 15 cubits, about 22 feet. Huge chunks of that land that had been ripped apart are now colliding underwater, creating some of our mountain ranges. Then, approximately 1 year after the flood began, the earth was dry enough for the animals to be released from the ark.
Go ahead and look away now if flashing lights bother you, because Derek is then smited for asking too many questions.
If there's millions of different species, how did Noah fit all of those on the ark?
No, I'm just kidding. That's just how they do every single scene transition for the rest of the movie. Why? For those of you with photosensitivity issues, I've got your back. I'm going to be putting this lightning bolt symbol in this corner of the screen 5 seconds before any more flashing lights for the rest of this video.
There are millions of species on Earth today, but let's think through this a little bit, okay? Whales, dolphins, fish, where do they live? Where do they live?
In the water.
That's right. During a flood, do you think they have to be on board the ark?
Either saltwater or freshwater fish still die in this situation, though. No matter how you slice it, the fountains of the Great Deep are either filled with saltwater or freshwater. Either way, the rain is freshwater, one way or another, the Earth is now covered in either salt or fresh water, which means the fish that are adapted to life in the other kind of water are now dead, as well as like coral reefs and stuff, which are adapted to life in relatively shallow water. Also, why do dolphins get to survive the flood, but babies and more importantly, possums don't? What did they do that the dolphins didn't do? If anything, dolphins are more sinful than any of the other animals. This justice system makes less and less sense the more they explain it.
So how many animals would have been on the ark?
They only
How
needed a
many?
total of 1,400 kinds, fewer than 7,000 animals total.
What?
Yeah, you're mentioning species over and over again, but the Bible talks about kinds. So think about this. Dogs, okay? You got wolves, coyotes, dingoes. What are they?
Dogs.
Yeah, but they're different species. They're just dogs. He just needs 2 members of the dog kind.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. If there were only 2 representatives of each kind and all the different species that we see came from that one pair of each kind, that would be an example of adaptive radiation, which, you guessed it, is part of evolution. Also, for certain kinds which have longer gestation periods and time to adulthood, like proboscideans, for example, elephants and the like, the only way to fit the vast diversity of species that we see in the post-flood fossil record would be for each generation to be a new species. Modern-day elephants take around 17 years to reach sexual maturity and have a gestation period of almost 2 years. That's about a 19-year generation time. Divide the 4,000-ish years since Noah's flood by 19, and you've got 210 generations to make over 180 species of proboscideans. Almost every generation of elephants is a different species than their mothers, which are different species than their grandmothers. That's the implication to this proposed simple solution to fitting too many animals on a big old boat.
Oh, wait a minute. Dinosaurs? Are you telling me dinosaurs were on the ark?
Of course dinosaurs were in the ark. This is a sauropod dinosaur.
Oh, the big ones.
Yeah, they were huge, except when they weren't.
Oh.
When they were young. They were a lot smaller.
Got 'em on the ark.
Of course.
It's moments like these that I feel compelled to just stop and remind everybody what we are and are not doing right now. We are not listening to a debate between 2 experts in the same field as they weigh the data and try to come to a better understanding about the natural world. We are not comparing 2 scientific theories on equal footing and with equal merit. What we are actually doing in this moment is listening to a grown man explain to an audience of probably mostly children that you can get dinosaurs on a boat, you just gotta get them while they're young. Like, it's so important that everyone understand this is not a fresh new take on biology. This is Florida man builds floating exotic animal sanctuary. That's what we're actually talking about right now.
You know, it makes a lot of sense to bring the younger ones. They eat less, they have less waste, they have many more
who's
years
that?
to reproduce. That is Ham's wife.
Now, that's a whole nother question. How did they live on the ark for 40 days and 40 nights?
Actually, they were on here for at least a year.
More than a year?
Maybe they moved in here while they were still building the ark. Why wouldn't they bring everything they need to cook the food and make the food and some of their belongings as well? They got to start life over after the flood.
Them talking about bringing all their stuff on board just made me realize that I can probably boost the views on this video if I pitch it as a luxury yacht review. I mean, that's essentially what this is, right? This is the original Mega-Yacht. Sail into legend on the ultimate floating sanctuary. The Ark is a bespoke and one-of-a-kind vessel that celebrates the beauty of life in all of its forms, except for fish and plants or whatever. Step aboard the very vision of opulence and luxury, just as long as you really, really like the look, smell, and feel of damp wood literally everywhere you go. Designed to harmonize with nature, as the vast majority of nature is being cruelly drowned, this floating fortress offers the ultimate blend of elegance, adventure, and non-sustainability. Stretching 300 cubits long, whatever a cubit is, the Ark offers unmatched space for your tiny, incestuous family, as well as a literal boatload of confused and frightened animals, which have been pulled far away from their natural habitats by a creator who couldn't think of a better way to reset his own creation than to callously murder countless millions of creatures in the most dramatic and unnecessary way possible. Beautifully crafted, with whatever the polar opposite of cutting-edge technology is, the Ark offers panoramic views of the endless and unforgiving ocean, conjured up by an all-powerful monster who regrets making you, while somehow also being all-knowing and therefore logically incapable of regret. Take in the deafening silence as you ponder on the fact that literally everything you've ever known is either trapped in the same involuntary cruise as you or drifting in the currents below your feet, eyes fixed open wide as their hands loosely clutch at their water-filled throats, all because they disappointed their loving father. Whether you're seeking refuge, adventure, or a divine escape from the unjustifiable devastation of a global genocide, the Ark redefines luxury on the water. Specifically, it redefines it as something genuinely and uniquely horrifying. The Ark, a ride so perfect you'll never want to see another boat again.
Yeah, but I mean, do we really see like evidence, like scientific evidence of the global flood?
Have a look at this. What do you think caused all of this?
Looks like water to me.
That's right, it's all erosional features. Do you know where this is found?
No.
Right here, on Mars. We see those erosion features, so it does look like there was some flooding there in the past, and many scientists think it was a huge flood there. Now we have all of those erosional features in much greater abundance and much larger scale right here on this planet, our home.
Earth.
That's right. And do you think that maybe this has some water that could cause flooding?
How much of the Earth is covered by water?
70%.
Of course, Mars has some erosion, therefore there was probably a large flood. Earth has more erosion, therefore there was probably a global flood. Science. In case there's any question, that's terrible evidence. Sometimes there's floods, so why not a global flood? Is the same kind of first grade level thinking that you would expect from an organization that also justifies their belief in unicorns by saying sometimes there's rhinoceroses and narwhals, so why not a one-horned horse? And also Eric Hovind, a man who was once crushed in a debate by a 6th grader.
The proof of God is that without God, you can't know anything. I'm saying if you don't know everything, then you can't know anything to be absolutely true.
So that means if I don't know everything, that means that I don't know if God exists.
You can't know anything. You can't even, you can't, the argument, and I'm sorry, Max, thanks for trying to get a, how old are you, buddy?
The veil is so thin, a child could see through it. Also, this isn't relevant, but I don't like the way that Derek is caressing the Earth like that. Get your grimy hands off my planet, dude. We then get this sequence where Jim tries to explain the justification for the flood, and it's just as gross as anybody else trying to justify mass murder.
So, all the people on Earth died?
They all died.
Why would God do this?
Derek, it's called judgment. Listen to a few verses from Genesis 6. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually.
You know what? Actually, I take it all back. Look at that place. That's as wicked as it gets. This is the exact kind of debauchery that warrants the death of almost every living thing on Earth. Look at that. You got the double flute. This lady's giving out free foot shots. This dude over here is drumming out his entire soul. And look at that stupid hat. What is that? A bell? A crown? A splootin' sausage? Do you want a flood? Because that's how you get a flood. Seriously though, nothing in this scene is any worse than what you would expect to see in any modern nightclub. Everything here seems to be consensual, except for whatever's happening to Terry, because he is well past consent. In fact, he might actually be dead. If this is enough to trigger a mass extinction event, I certainly hope this god isn't watching any standard college party, because this whole solar system is at risk if he sees the kind of stuff that I was up to at 18.
And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart.
I mentioned this briefly during the yacht bit, but how does God regret things? An omniscient being would know everything that's going to happen, certainly the results of his own actions. How does something that already knows everything that's going to happen have regrets? That doesn't make any sense. I was worried about it making sense.
So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth.
Sorry, just point of order. That didn't happen. Even if you believe in this story, this was not the end of all flesh. It was not the destruction of the earth. I actually live on the earth, so I'm somewhat of an expert in this area. The earth is still here, and the flesh on it is still persistent. And that's because the story of Noah's flood shares the same overall theme as many of the stories in the Bible, especially the story of Jesus. It's a story of death and then renewal. The verses that Tim Chafee is reading here are just the death part. And they make a lot of promises that even this story, especially like the world around us, do not fulfill.
So, I mean, the world was really bad. Wait a minute. The world today's pretty bad. Doesn't this world deserve to be judged again?
It does, and he will judge it. But God provided the way for us to be saved from that judgment.
He did?
He did.
How?
You know, the way that he didn't offer to all those people that he just drowned. And their babies. Those babies deserve to be murdered, so they were murdered. You also deserve to be murdered, but it's chill, because we got loopholes now. All of this makes total moral sense to Eric Hovind, a man who once blamed the Sandy Hook shooting on taking God out of public schools.
Well, you gotta find Gabby. She'll show you what God did.
Who's Gabby?
She's here in the ark, and if you don't find her, you'll never know.
Okay, I'll go find Gabby.
Derek then begins wandering aimlessly around the museum, asking the exhibits if they know where Gabby is.
Hey there, Derek Daly, the new night guard. You wouldn't happen to know where I could find a Gabby, would you? Hey, looking for Gabby? Gabby, Yabby, something like that. Sounds like she talks a lot. You met her? Hey, Ham, I'm looking for Gabby.
Eventually, he opens a little door and sees that awful teddy bear from the last movie. Only this time, it's not like a surprise or anything, it's just kind of there. But that doesn't stop Derek from acting like a lunatic anyway.
Teddy?
Dump, dump, run, run.
What is this, Groundhog Day? Sheesh!
And then, after that wholly unnecessary sequence, we finally find Gabby, and she's just a specter walking through the museum like it's the haunting of freaking Hill House.
Gabrielle? Gabby? Gabby! Hey, Gabby! No, wait, Gabby! Gabby!
Again, when did these become horror movies?
Gabby!
Derek, over here.
I actually really like this shot because before Derek walks away, we get a view of this disgusting comic book frame where this man is dying from cancer and explains that cancer is actually our fault because we sinned, which is especially wild when you remember that the sin that he's talking about wasn't even necessarily his sin. It was the sin of some other people thousands of years ago. His great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents sinned, and now he's paying the price for it. And that's why pediatric cancer, cancer in children, and even congenital cancer, literally babies being born with cancer, is all morally justifiable. And the only response we get from the daughter is, "Oh, daddy," and that just loops it right back around and makes it funny again.
I'm dying because a naked rib woman disobeyed a direct order to not eat certain fruit.
Oh, yes, Daddy.
God damn it.
So Gabby's entire role in this section is just to VoIP around the museum to lead Derek here so that Jim can also talk about this other panel about where God killed every firstborn son in Egypt.
And that night the destroyer would come through the land, and any house that was not covered by the blood of a perfect lamb would lose their firstborn son.
All those children, many of them probably infants, killed not because of what they did, and not even because of what their parents did, but because of their king. After he had also already tortured all of those people with like lice and boils, and also killed all of their livestock with a pestilence, and killed all the fish by turning the river to blood. Or just like the Amalekites, where God specifically commands Saul to kill every man, woman, baby, infant, ox, sheep, camel, and donkey. I guess when you think about it, the flood story isn't even that special. Killing a bunch of innocent people and animals for situations that they have no control over is kind of this God's whole MO. This time it was just wetter. Jim then goes on to tell the rest of the story of Christianity, which I'm not here to talk about. I try to keep things on this channel at least kind of science related as much as I can. The whole reason I'm even talking about this movie is because it had some stuff in there about like tectonic folding and speciation and whatnot. Like, I'm always going to be open about being an atheist. I just don't want to make too many videos on this channel that are specifically just anti-religion, you know? Because I want people who are deconstructing or maybe questioning their beliefs to be able to come here without feeling attacked. It's a whole thing. The point is, this section is about doors. There was a door on the ark, and doors played a big part in the Exodus, and shepherds were sitting in the door to guard their flocks, and Jesus' tomb had a door. They're big into doors here.
Door, 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 door.
Door stuck! Door stuck! Please!
And all of this culminates with Jim encouraging Derek to go through the narrow door of Christianity to be saved from death or hell or drowning or something. I wasn't paying attention.
Derek, you must decide.
I know. I know.
Why are we getting another you have to choose moment? Didn't we do that in the last movie as well? Why do they keep holding this man's consciousness hostage? And just when you think the movie is over, we get this weird sequence of Derek arguing with his atheist self, in which the atheist position is one of pure anger and selfishness without any kind of critical thought.
We have got to get out of here. Out of here? But this makes so much sense. Sense? Will you listen to yourself? That's absurd. Absurd? Yeah. We were taught evolution in school by real scientists. These people believe Bible stories are real. I'm sticking with evolution. Are you kidding? What good has that done for us? We're blaming God for mom's cancer, and that anger ruins every relationship we get into. Well, you do what you want. I want to have a little more fun before I go believing in God.
So believing in evolution is the same thing as blaming God for cancer, which is the same thing as not believing that God exists, which is the same thing as just wanting to sin. It's like every theistic straw man wrapped up into 2 sentences. This is the caricature that they believe is actually representative of everybody who disagrees with them. There is one moment near the beginning of this sequence, however, that I think is the single most telling sentence in either of these movies.
It's all about the starting point. If you start with evolution, you believe the science backs up evolution. And if you start with creation, then the science will confirm the Bible.
If you start with belief in the Bible, then science will back up the Bible. I agree with that, because faith is a blinder. Belief structures your worldview. In science, you are taught to question everything that you are told. The reason why science education is so effective is because you are taught to critically analyze source material. Most science classes come with a lab component as well, where you actually test things for yourself. I've tested the speed of light in a lab. I've tested the force of gravity in a lab. I've tested evolution in a lab. And especially in grad school, a major part of your education is reading scientific papers and then deciding whether you agree with them or not and presenting your arguments in front of groups of your peers. You are not just passively taking in information without thinking about it. You are forced to question everything. Eric Hovind and Answers in Genesis fundamentally do not understand how inductive reasoning and critical thinking actually work. They have no idea what a science education even looks like, because if they did, they would have never admitted something that sad. The reality is, by the accusation of someone who does not believe in creationism, and now by the admission of people who do, they only believe in creationism because they believe in creationism. They don't care what the evidence is. They believe it because they believe it, because they believe it, because they believe it. Real world Derek is then woken up by Jim and Gabby, two people who found a man unconscious on the ground, didn't call an ambulance, and instead started slapping him and splashing water in his face. You know, the exact kind of emergency medical care that you would expect in a movie written by a man who was once ordered by the FDA to stop selling vitamin supplements that he claimed could cure and prevent cancer.
Derek. Wake up. Derek.
Here, maybe this will work.
Yeah, try that.
Oh, man. What happened?
Do you remember anything?
Something hit me.
The flashlight?
Well, a flash of light. I gotta tell Sarah.
Wait, you might have a concussion.
Yes, he probably has a concussion. You found him unconscious on the ground, determined that he was knocked out by a blow to the head, and now he's behaving erratically. Concussion equals very yes. Why are you letting him run around? Why haven't you called an ambulance yet? What is wrong with you? And finally, the movie ends with a thoroughly concussed Derek getting behind the wheel of a car and venturing off into the world to sustain further brain damage elsewhere. The end. How is this one so much worse? The first movie was so awful and the bar was so low. How could they have made the sequel so much more lazy? Oh wait, the credits say this one was shot in 12 hours on a cell phone. The last movie said it was shot in 24 hours on a cell phone. So they worked half as hard, produced a movie with less than half of the quality and content, and somehow were able to cram in twice as much immoral nonsense. I also noticed that here on the Creation Today Ministry channel, they have these same two movies dubbed in Chinese.
我说这地方真不错。
你知道从这里往上有3层。
Wow.
Do you think that's to try to save face after the whole Dr. Ding Dong thing? Or do you think that Eric is just hoping that a little splash of multiculturalism will make up for that one time that he posted a poem on his blog about immigrants in turbans coming to America to buy up all the real estate, get on welfare, take over the neighborhood, and kick out all the white people? And then when he was called out for that, he pulled that post down and made a statement saying that he's not racist, he just really hates laziness. And so in order to share his disdain for laziness, he only wrote about non-white turban-wearing immigrants. Or maybe there's just money to be made in the Chinese market. The world may never know. Overall, I give this video a science teacher challenge level 1 out of 10. There's barely any science in it, and the science that is there is almost as miserable as the rest of the movie. Please don't make me watch any more Eric Hovind content. Watching these movies has been some of the most mind-numbing experiences of my life, and I grew up in Oklahoma. And really quick before we go, I'm delighted to announce that I'm doing another global science tour. This last summer, we went to the Galapagos to see tortoises, iguanas, sea lions, and penguins. And next year, we're going to Malaysia to see orangutans, pygmy elephants, proboscis monkeys, and sun bears. As I'm recording this video, we still have a few spots left in all 3 groups, so if you want to explore the natural world with me, then use the link in the description to secure your spot right now. And with that, I'm Forrest Valkai. Thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, and all the other stuff we do here on YouTube. Please exit through the gift shop, pick up one of these sweet t-shirts. Have an awesome rest of your day, and never stop learning. Bye-bye.